The Tolkien Road, Episode 115, The Lord of the Rings, The Passing of the Grey Company. Alright, go ahead. The Tolkien Road, 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 the Tolkien Road,
Hey there, fellow travelers. Welcome to the Tolkien Road, a long walk through Middle-earth. On this episode, we continue our journey through the Lord of the Rings with Book 5, Chapter 2, The Passing of the Grey Company. Before we get started, why not head on over to iTunes and leave the Tolkien Road a rating and feedback? It's a great way to show your support for the show and takes less than a minute. You can also stop by TolkienRoad.com, learn about previous episodes, and say hey. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/TolkienRoad, and on Twitter via @TolkienRoad. Thanks for listening, and enjoy. Hello everyone, welcome to the Tolkien Road, episode 115, The Lord of the Rings, The Passing of the Grey Company. Greta, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you, John?
I'm good, doing well.
Terrific.
Special thanks to our executive producer, William Hutton.
Dr. Hutton.
As well as our other generous patrons. If you are interested in becoming a patron of the Tolkien Road, head on over to patreon.com/TolkienRoad to learn more. You can also go to TolkienRoad.com, and there should be a link there for Patreon. So,
Yep.
can't hurt to check it out.
No.
Find out what it entails.
Yeah.
Especially if you've been a long-time listener.
Mm-hmm.
All kinds of cool bonus stuff over there for you to check out. So,
Yes, indeed.
just do it.
That's right.
And speaking of Patreon, we're almost caught up. We started the thing, and we've been in the process of getting caught up on all the bonus stuff that we promised, because we kind of fell behind a little bit in the spring time frame.
Mm-hmm.
So we did a drawing last week for a book drawing, right? We do a monthly prize for our patrons.
Right.
In terms of a book drawing.
Yep.
We did July last month. I'm sorry, we did June last month. Actually, we weren't caught up yet, so we're going to go ahead and do July, so we'll be all caught up.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
So we've got our winners so far have been Margaret Lyon, Brian Orr, Caitlin Fascista, Caleb Santana, James Applegate, and Emilio Perea. So we're trying to keep it so that you can't win for a year, after you've won once. So we're gonna make it between our other 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Is that right? 9.
Yeah, 9.
9 patrons.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I think we've got one more than that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's been 6 months. I thought we had 16 over here. Let me make sure I got everybody on the list. Hold on. Sorry. This is our just horrible unprofessionalism. Let's see here. So, yeah, it says 16 patrons over here. Who am I forgetting?
Uh-oh.
Let's see here. View all current patrons. So, check. Oh, Lawrence McGowan, who is a new patron as of the 16th of July. So,
oh, awesome.
Hey, Lawrence.
Thanks, Lawrence.
Thank you. So you're added to the list, too. All right, so that's 10.
10.
All right, so we need to pick a number between 1 and 10. All right. Hey, Siri, pick a number between 1 and 10.
Random number between 1 and 10 is 9.
All right, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Chris Loftus.
Chris.
So, Chris.
Congrats
to you. You will. I'll be reaching out to you to find out what your choice is.
Awesome.
All right. So, secret word. I know we messed up on that last week.
Yeah,
So
we did.
We're continuing with the same one.
We're continuing with the same one.
Very well.
And we're gonna really try hard to not forget this time.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to remember in these, when you're planning these episodes and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I know we make it sound easy.
Mm-hmm.
We sound so professional and smooth and everything,
Yeah,
but
we really got our act together.
Really when you peer behind the curtain, I know we sound like this just the Wizard of Oz up there, but when you peer behind the curtain, there we are, just a little man pulling levers.
Pulling levers.
Yeah.
Simple machines.
That's right.
Yep.
And it's when we're getting ready to start, it's like oh, I forgot to do this. Oh, I forgot to do this. Panic mode. So anyway, so we're gonna remember the secret word this week.
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
Good. Okay. So, darn Garsnart. Yeah, we're gonna remember it.
Is that it?
Yeah.
That's the secret word?
No. I'm just saying, darn Garsnart. We're gonna remember it.
Oh, yes. We are.
Yeah. Okay. So,
Yay.
Book 5, Chapter 2, The Passing of the Great Company. What'd you think overall, Greta?
What did I think?
Yeah. Just general.
Fine.
Yeah.
Not, didn't blow my mind. I guess important plot information.
Mm-hmm.
But not really that exciting. What did you
I had
think?
a feeling you were going to say that.
Yeah, I know. You probably loved it.
I did. This wasn't like my favorite chapter. It's no Council of Elrond.
No.
But nothing is really.
True.
So, but I did. I liked a lot of the background information. I liked a lot of the character development. I think the passage, the dialogue between Éowyn and Aragorn is really interesting. And there's just little details in this chapter that I forget about every time. Mm-hmm. I come back to read it.
Yeah, no, I really did like that. I liked the that was probably my favorite part, was the interaction between Aragorn and Éowyn.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought Gimli was kind of funny.
Yeah, well.
But yeah, I don't know. It was just kind of like ho hum a little bit for me.
Whatever. They just ignore everybody. All right.
Okay,
So,
I'm gonna leave, and we'll let this be
no,
John
you can
Carswell's
continue. You
show.
can't go. You can't go.
Oh, man.
But just ignore everything she just said.
You know what, John?
Ignore her lack of enthusiasm.
I think
So-
you know what you need to do? You need to work on your attribute of chivalry.
Well,
That's what you need to do
yeah.
when it comes to me and my opinions on Tolkien.
It's not a very chivalrous attitude to have.
But I'm allowed to have it.
Whatever.
Anyway.
All right. So, from Isengard, the road goes ever on. So we pick up here. So, Book 5, Chapter 1 was all about Gandalf and Pippin arriving in Gondor, arriving at Minas Tirith,
Right.
and their dialogue with Denethor.
Right.
We go back now and we switch over to the other half. So it's interesting. This structure develops into two towers where Book 3 is all about like two different groups.
Right.
You have the two parts of the Fellowship where you have Merry and Pippin, and then you have Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli.
Yes.
Right, and they kind of go back and forth, and that actually carries forward into Book 5. Right, we don't hear anything about Frodo and Sam in Book 5.
No, true.
It's all about Pippin, Merry, Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas, and then Gandalf again. But now, since Pippin is gone with Gandalf, Merry is with Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, and they actually further fracture in this chapter.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, Merry gets left behind.
Merry gets left behind with Rohan, right? With the riders of Rohan and Théoden.
Yeah.
So, but they start out here at Isengard. So we're going all the way back to Isengard. Way back to the west, and they're a long way out from Minas Tirith, which is really where they need to get to.
Yeah,
they all need to get to. So, but I wanted to just begin. I noticed something really interesting at the beginning of this chapter. In the second paragraph of the chapter, Aragorn says, "We will ride on together, but we shall not go alone, as I thought. The king is now determined to set out at once. Since the coming of the winged shadow, he desires to return to the hills under cover of night." "And then whither?" said Legolas. "I cannot say yet," Aragorn answered. Now, think about that. "And then whither? I cannot say." Does that sound familiar?
Oh, yeah, it does.
Yeah.
The poem.
Yeah, the road goes ever on.
The road goes ever
right?
on.
I was looking at that and I realized, and then whither I cannot say.
Whoa, good
and
call.
Whither, it's actually, and whither then I cannot say. So I don't know if Tolkien threw that in there intentionally.
Like a little wink wink.
But I just kind of think of that. I just found that really interesting and significant.
Yeah.
Because so often the characters within The Lord of the Rings talk in a sort of antiquated musical kind of fashion.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Where they're using thithers and withers. Sometimes they speak in more of a normal fashion, like what I mean normal, like more of a fashion that's normal to the way we modern contemporaries speak.
Right.
But sometimes they go into this more medieval musical style when they speak, and they do it here, and it's a more poetic style.
Yeah.
And one of the things that fascinates me about the world of Middle Earth is the idea that this world began, that Tolkien's creation myth for this world, for this cosmos of Middle Earth, is one of music, right?
Yeah.
That it's founded
Right.
in music, that
Yes.
it's created by music. And when you see little hints of this music kind of popping up through the, it like is sort of a metaphysic that informs the reality. I just think it's really cool. You have the whole you have 3 chapters on Tom Bombadil, who's kind of this musical creature,
Right. Yeah.
and then you just see little shadows of it, little hints of it, and things like this. And again, this could just be something like Tolkien not even realizing he was doing this.
Right. Yeah.
But
See a coincidence,
I just think it's cool that he says, and then whether Legolas says, and then whether, and Aragorn answers, I cannot say.
I cannot say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm really impressed that you picked up on that because I totally didn't. It's a good job.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just thought it was cool. It's a minor sort of thing, but I thought it was worth pointing out.
Absolutely. Agreed.
So Aragorn at this point is they all realize that they're in Isengard and they have to get to Minas Tirith, all of them. And Aragorn fully expects at this point, early in the chapter, that that's where he's going. Right?
That's
He's
his
going
plan.
along with Théoden, the Riders of Rohan, Legolas and Gimli. All of them are heading to Minas Tirith, which is still several days ride away.
Right. Yes.
So.
And they're going there to help.
Yes.
Defend.
Right.
I'm trying to remember though. How did they? Is that where Gandalf told them to go before he left? How do they know to go there?
I believe that was the plan. I haven't gone back and looked, and I don't have my copy of Two Towers right in front of me, so I cannot say, but for certain. But
I was just trying to remember. It's really not that important.
But it's they know there's this kind of gathering storm. They know Gandalf went that way. They know that Sauron is aware. Like Sauron's been sending spies and is aware of what's been going on.
Right.
Somewhat. So, and there's nothing. They've thrown down Saruman at this point, right?
Right. Yes.
They've defeated him. So you've got this huge army. Why would they stick around?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think they've. I think for all intents and purposes they've been summoned, and I think at this point too, I'm not sure if they've actually, if in their time frame, they've actually seen the beacons. I don't think the beacons were mentioned in this chapter, but remember at the beginning of
Gandalf
chapter 1,
Pippin
book 5,
saw
chapter
them.
1,
Yeah.
Gandalf and Pippin saw the beacons being lighted from Gondor, which summons the Riders of Rohan.
Gotcha. Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So.
Good stuff.
So anyway, they have to go back, and between there and here, they're gonna pass back by Helm's Deep. They're gonna pass by Edoras. So they've got a long journey, and they're gonna muster like halfway between where they are now and Minas Tirith. They're gonna muster with all the men of Rohan and anybody else who wants to join in.
Right.
So that's where we are at the outset of this chapter. So they're heading along, and it's not long before they sense that someone is coming up behind them. There's a lot of coming up behind people in this chapter.
Yeah.
Sneaking up behind people.
Indeed.
But it turns out it is it's good news. Yeah. So do you want to read starting where it says Halbarad, right there, and just read a couple of paragraphs?
Halbarad. If I can find it in my edition. Oh, I see it.
Yeah.
Halbarad, he said, of all joys, this is the least expected. Merry breathed a sigh of relief. He had thought this was some last trick of Saruman's to waylay the king while he had only a few men about him. But it seemed that there would be no need to die in Théoden's defense. Not yet, at any rate. He sheathed his sword. All is well, said Aragorn, turning back. Here are some of my own kin from the far land where I dwelt. But why they come, and how many they be, Halbarad shall tell us. I have 30 with me, said Halbarad. That is all of our kindred that could be gathered in haste, but the brethren Elladan and Elrohir have ridden with us, desiring to go to the war. We rode as swiftly as we might when your summons came.
All right. So, and interestingly, we find out that Aragorn did not summon them, and that's
Right.
kind of this mystery that lingers through
Right.
the chapter, is how did this summons come?
Right.
I don't want to spend too much time on that because I didn't really completely understand, but they basically kind of decide that Galadriel must have done it.
Yeah.
And
Right.
but I don't
Lady of
think
the Wood.
I don't think it's 100% clear that even she did. So
Yeah.
you know, it's just kind
There
of
was some
mysterious.
supernatural force.
You know, maybe it was, and maybe it was clearly
Well, it had to have
Galadriel,
been.
but you know, yeah, there's some bigger play going on
Yeah.
there. So you've got Halbarad and Elladan and Elrohir. Elladan and Elrohir are the sons of Elrond. That's right.
From Rivendell.
Yeah, so they're half elven, and you know, and of course they are. So they would be the brothers of
Arwen.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so they show up, and the rest of these are Dunedain, but these are half elven. These two wanted to go to war, so they show up as well, and they bring with them word from Elrond. He says, for Aragorn, he says, the days are short. If thou art in haste, remember the paths of the dead.
I have an interesting note.
Yeah.
Did you notice that was a haiku?
The days are short. If thou art in haste, remember the paths of the dead. Yes, it is.
Yep.
Is that the haiku that you used for this chapter?
It was going to be.
Yeah.
But then I wrote my own, so I thought that might,
Be cheating.
might be a little cheating. But I wanted to be sure to mention it.
That's
I
cool.
thought that was kind of cool.
It's cool note. Cool to know. Yeah.
So I think Tolkien was a haiku fan as well.
Maybe.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. You never. In all seriousness, I don't know that he ever mentioned anything about haiku.
Yeah.
You know, it's originally a Japanese form, I think, and I don't know that he was. That was like, I don't know that that was his cultural.
No. I said that kind of tongue in cheek, but it was just funny because in the last chapter, there was Gandalf said something that was in haiku form as well.
Yeah.
That
Funny.
Al Taylor
We just
brought to
got
our attention.
he's got poetry popping up all over the place
I
in this
know.
chapter.
He's a talented dude.
So along with them, they bring this banner, this black cloth, and
Is that what a standard is? Because they keep calling it a standard.
yes,
Okay.
and this is from the Lady of Rivendell, so it's from Arwen.
Arwen, yeah.
And she says, she wrought it in secret, and long was the making, but she also sends word to you. The days now are short, either our hope cometh, or all hopes end. Therefore I send thee what I have made for thee. Farewell, Elfstone. So this is a gift for Aragorn from Arwen.
And Elfstone is what, her pet name for Aragorn, or what?
Yeah,
I thought that was weird.
Well, I think it is, and I need to. You know what? I've always wondered what the deal with that name is. So let's look it up while we're talking about it.
Okay.
Let's see here.
Can't believe you didn't do this beforehand, John.
Well, there's a lot in this chapter.
Unbelievable. Green gem.
The Elisar or
okay.
Elfstone was a green gem set on a silver eagle-shaped brooch. It had the light of the sun within it, and those who looked through it saw everything that was aged and withered as young once more.
So he wears that, right?
Yes, that's-
Aragorn wears that. It was a gift from Arwen. Okay, so
Right.
that makes sense. All right. Well, now we know.
There you go. So, the Elfstone was crafted by an elven smith in Gondolin named Inerthil, whose skill in jewel crafting was second only to Fëanor. He gave it to Idril which she bore upon her breast during the fall of Gondolin, accounting for its escape. And in turn, she gave it to her son Arundel, who bore it upon his breast on his flight to the Undying Lands. So, apparently Arundel wore this thing at one point.
Cool.
So, yeah.
All right.
There you go. Hold on, let's read this.
Yeah.
The stone remains with the Valar, and Galadriel longs to once more return to Valar, remains in the band of Noldor. Galadriel then passes the stone to her daughter Celebrian, who in turn gives it to her daughter Arwen. Galadriel keeps it once more, and Lothlorien to pass it on to Aragorn.
So she gave it to him when they went through
Yes.
Lothlorien.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That was like his gift when she was handing out gifts.
Yeah, actually, this is not the original, apparently. Celebrimbor, who is in love with her, remakes the jewel and gives it to her. He learns the art of elven blacksmithing in Gondolin. He learned the art of elven blacksmithing in Gondolin when he was a friend of Anerthil and ever his friendly competitive rival. So...
So what do you mean it's not the original?
So, the original, it says... Oh, wait, okay. This is interesting. All right, so I'm looking at the article on Lord of the Rings Wikia.com, LOTR.wikia.com. 2 versions are hereafter recorded as to the fate of the stone. Olorin brings the stone to Middle-earth as a sign that the Valar, Olorin, who's Gandalf, brings the stone to Middle-earth as a sign that the Valar had not forsaken Middle-earth. He gave it to Galadriel, but he prophesied that it is not for you to possess. You shall hand it on when the time comes. For before you grow weary and at last forsake Middle-earth, one shall come who is to receive it, and his name shall be that of the stone, LSR, who shall be called. So, and then, alternatively, the stone remains with the Valar, and Galadriel longs to once more return to Valinor, but remains under the ban of the Noldor. Thus she turns to Celebrimbor and laments to him, I am grieved in Middle-earth, for leaves fall and flowers fade that I have loved so, that the land of my dwelling is filled with regret, that no spring can redress. I would have trees and grass about me that do not die, here in the land that is mine. Celebrimbor, who is in love with her, remakes the jewel and gives it to her. He learns the art of elven blacksmithing in Gondolin when he was a friend of Anerthil and ever his friendly competitive rival. Galadriel then passes the stone to her daughter Celebrian, who in turn gives it to her daughter Arwen. Galadriel keeps it once more in Lothlorien to pass it to Aragorn. So there's not an official story as to how this thing came to be in Galadriel's hands.
Okay.
But it came to Aragorn from Galadriel, who had it in safekeeping. And apparently he was destined to have it. So
Okay.
So that is the elf stone.
Got it.
It just sounds funny because, elf, like we have all these other like magical words for it, and then you have elf stone, and we're like, what's an elf stone?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Is it an elf
Seems
made of
almost
stones?
a little too ordinary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, the days are short. If thou art in haste, remember the paths of the dead. That's the word of Elrond to Aragorn.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And then Arwen has her own message for Aragorn.
She does. That's correct. So Aragorn now has this call to go to the paths of the dead, and we're going to find out a little bit more about that as we go. So we turn our attention from there to Merry and Théoden.
Yes.
So Merry is wandering all along here because he no longer has Pippin with him.
Mm-hmm.
So Merry is feeling
kind of
lonely and small, kind of like Pippin's probably feeling a little bit right now in Gondor, right? Minas Tirith.
Yeah.
Merry is feeling a little lonely and small, left behind.
Yes.
And
like useless baggage.
Yeah, he does. He says that I feel a little bit like useless baggage at one point.
Mm-hmm.
But he goes and he has a meal with Théoden, and they have a conversation. Mm-hmm. Merry says, Éomer laments that there are no great weapon hoards here. Maybe a light helm might be found to fit him, but we have no mail or sword for one of his stature, referring to Merry.
Right.
Merry says, I have a sword. Climbing from his seat and drawing from its black sheath his small bright blade. Filled suddenly with love for this old man, he knelt on one knee and took his hand and kissed it. May I lay the sword of Meriadoc of the Shire on your lap, Théoden King, he cried. Receive my service, if you will. Gladly will I take it, said the king, and laying his long old hands upon the brown hair of the hobbit, he blessed him. Rise now, Meriadoc, Esquire of Rohan of the household of Meduseld, he said. Take your sword and bear it unto good fortune. As a father you will be to me, said Merry. For a little while, said Théoden.
Wow, a lot of chivalry in that passage there.
Most definitely. So it's interesting to me that you've got Pippin pledging allegiance to Denethor, pledging his, his service to Denethor and Minas Tirith, and then Merry pledging his service to Théoden.
Mm-hmm. I thought the same thing.
Yeah, just an interesting little bit of parallelism. I'm not sure if there's a deeper significance to it, but at the very least, it's something to take note of. Yeah, you got both of these hobbits doing this.
Right, speaks to their character, I think, too.
Yeah,
of the hobbit's character.
Most definitely.
Yeah, enough just their intense desire, I think, to contribute in some way. right?
Yeah.
Like, they're like, we're just not joyriders, right? Like, we want to feel needed and have a purpose in this whole fight.
Right. Yeah. I don't want to feel like I don't want to be useless baggage.
Right.
Let me
Let
fight
me do
somehow.
something. Yeah. I may be small, but I be mighty. So
And-
let me serve you.
Exactly.
It's like my favorite quote. I'm not short. I'm concentrated awesome.
That's right.
These hobbits, I think they're concentrated awesome.
They are. That's
Yeah.
Hobbits are concentrated awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Pure concentrated
Pure concentrated awesome.
awesomeness.
Yes.
Right on. So, let's see. So, any other thoughts? You look like you were going to say something before I made note of the parallelism.
No, I was just gonna say that I thought that was interesting.
Okay.
Because when I was reading this, I was like, oh, Pippin did the same thing with Denethor. It's cool.
Right. So we learned that so we've got the paths of the dead that Aragorn has been charged with taking, and now Merry has pledged his service to Théoden.
Right.
So we're going to find out that Merry is not going to continue with Aragorn. He's going to go with Théoden and
Right.
that part of the company.
Yes.
We're going to find out that Legolas and Gimli end up going with Aragorn
Mm-hmm.
through the paths of the dead.
Right.
We do find out that this muster of Rohan is 3 days away.
Yeah.
So Aragorn, a little later, Aragorn says 3 days, and the muster of Rohan will only be begun, but I see that it cannot now be hastened. He looked up, and it seemed that he had made some decision. His face was less troubled. Then by your leave, Lord, I must take new counsel for myself and my kindred. We must ride our own road, and no longer in secret. For me, the time of stealth has passed. I will ride east by the swiftest way, and I will take the paths of the dead. The paths of the dead, said Théoden, and trembled. Why do you speak of them? Éomer turned and gazed at Aragorn, and it seemed to Merry that the faces of the riders that sat within hearing turned pale at the words. If there be in truth such words, said Théoden, their gate is in Donharrow, but no living man may pass it.
Truth in such paths.
Yeah.
Not words. You said words. But anyway, not a big deal. Yeah, there is, it's kind of scary.
I wouldn't want to go to a place called the Paths of the Dead.
No. It sounds like a scary road.
Right.
So so you said that Aragorn was charged to take the path of the dead.
Yes.
And you're saying that was what the message from Elrond was.
Mhm.
Was a charge to
Yes.
take the path of the dead. And we don't quite know why,
Right.
right?
We don't entirely know why, but we start to learn a little bit more through this chapter. I do want to make note that they're still a long way away from getting to Minas Tirith. So,
Mm-hmm.
The sense that we have in that first chapter where it's like the storm is like upon them.
Mm-hmm.
We get the sense that there's an army coming to Minas Tirith, and the
Yes.
timing of all this, how it lines up, is not 100% clear to me.
Mm-hmm.
What time it is here versus what time it was in chapter 1.
Right.
But they're 3 days away from arriving at the place where they're going to muster with the rest of the forces of Rohan, which means even they're probably a couple of days away from Minas Tirith.
Yeah, so they're probably like a good 5 or so
4 or
days
5
out.
days at
Yeah.
least away. So
Yeah.
this is this is not. If there's a time to be hasty in Middle Earth, this is the time that they need to be a little hasty
Exactly.
to get there. I'm going to just glance back here at Appendix B and see if I can piece it together on the fly. But they, let's see here. So,
Well, how long has it been since Gandalf and Pippin left? Do we know that? How long since the first split?
all right. So look, I'm looking back here in my book and it's in Appendix B, and it's talking about it's in March of 3019, and it says, on the 6th of March, Aragorn is overtaken by the Dunedain. Théoden sets out from the Hornburg for Harrowdale. Aragorn sets out later. On the 8th is when Aragorn takes the Pass of the Dead. He reaches Erech at midnight. Frodo leaves Henneth Anun at that time, the window on the west. Gandalf reaches Minas Tirith on the 9th. Okay, so actually right now...
Interesting. So this is happening before.
Right.
They get
and it says the muster of Rohan actually ends up occurring on the 10th. So they're 4 days out from the muster of Rohan, but Gandalf doesn't actually reach Rohan, or Minas Tirith, until the day before that.
Right.
So in the grand scheme of things, they're not as far behind as we may have thought, given how this chapter comes after chapter 1. We're actually viewing events in the past compared to most of chapter 1.
Yes.
So a couple days in the past.
Okay. I can relax a little bit then.
Yeah.
Man, I thought we were, like, doomed.
Yeah.
They were never going to make it in time.
You deemed that we were doomed?
I deemed.
Yes.
I deemed that we were doomed. But perhaps not as immediately as I suspected.
Yes. Perhaps. Perhaps it isn't.
Indeed.
So, and then Wither? I cannot say.
Okay.
So, blah. Okay. Aragorn and...
Save it. Rescue this episode,
Aragorn
please.
and Sauron. Now, that was a worthwhile little excursion there, talking about the timetable.
No, I agree.
That's what Appendix B is there for.
I agree.
So, Aragorn tells us a little bit now about looking into the Stone of Orthanc and about this kind of wrestling through the Palantirs that he just did with Sauron. So,
right. Which must have happened before Gandalf left, right? Because didn't Gandalf take the Palantir with him?
Did he?
I thought he did. Was it just like hanging? Or maybe Aragorn? I don't know.
I can't remember.
Okay.
You're always going to be throwing out these things that I can't remember.
Sorry. Just, trying to keep you on your toes. I'm almost positive he took it with him. On the horse.
Okay, well, let's not worry about that right now.
Okay.
Maybe we can outsource that answer.
Okay.
A struggle somewhat grimmer, right there.
A struggle somewhat grimmer.
You see it?
Yes, I see it.
All right,
Do you want me to
start
read
reading.
it?
Yes.
A struggle somewhat grimmer for my part than the battle of the Hornburg, answered Aragorn. I have looked in the Stone of Orthanc, my friends. You have looked in the accursed Stone of Wizardry? Exclaimed Gimli with fear and astonishment in his face. Did you say aught to him? Even Gandalf feared that encounter. You forget to whom you speak, said Aragorn sternly, and his eyes glinted. What do you fear that I should say to him? Did I not openly proclaim my title before the doors of Edoras? Nay, Gimli, he said in a softer voice, and the grimness left his face, and he looked like one who has labored in sleepless pain for many nights. Nay, my friends, I am the lawful master of the stone, and I had both the right and the strength to use it, or so I judged. The right cannot be doubted. The strength was enough. Barely. He drew a deep breath. It was a bitter struggle, and the weariness is slow to pass. I spoke no word to him, and in the end I wrenched the stone to my own will. That alone he will find hard to endure, and he beheld me. Yes, Master Gimli, he saw me, and in other guise than you see me here. If that will aid him, then I have done ill, but I do not think so. To know that I lived and walked the earth was a blow to his heart, I deem, for he knew it not till now. The eyes in Orthanc did not see through the armor of Théoden, but Sauron has not forgotten Isildur and the sword of Elendil. Now in the very hour of his great designs, the heir of Isildur and the sword are revealed, for I showed the blade reforged to him. He is not so mighty yet that he is above fear. Nay, doubt ever gnaws him.
Yeah. So, I love this little passage with Aragorn because Aragorn's like, you don't need to worry about me. I am Aragorn.
Don't you know who I am?
Right. He's like, they're like, Gandalf was afraid of this even.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, but I'm Aragorn.
Right.
You know, and it's interesting because I think this is where a lot of people have a problem with the portrayal of Aragorn in the films and here. Not to cast any ill will on Viggo Mortensen, who I think did a good job in his portrayal of the character in the script, but this is Aragorn. Like, Aragorn knows full well who he is, he's like, it's not that he's arrogant and rides around doing this all the time. He just knows who he is,
right? And
he's like, I'm the king.
He's
I'm the rightful king.
His lineage.
I am Isildur's heir.
Right.
Do you not know who I am? Mm-hmm. By the way, Isildur was my forefather, and what did he do? He slew Sauron.
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So
No, true. But I think this shows real growth of character in him. Because I don't
Yeah.
think he's had this confidence till now.
you don't think he's known who he? I mean, he knows.
I think he's known. Obviously, he's known who he is, but I don't know that he's fully taken it on
Yeah.
till now. I don't think that he's fully accepted and been comfortable with the idea. Because I mean, there's a great burden
Yeah.
that goes along with this, right? And I don't think he's. I don't think he's been ready to accept everything that this title entails until now. That's just my opinion. I mean, not that he's been like a wuss or, kind of backed away from challenges or anything like that, but I think I just think this shows a new aspect of his character, like a real growth.
See, is it a question of, and this is a general question for anybody listening, and because I think this is a very interesting point. Is it a question? Because the way in the movie he's portrayed as having doubts about himself, and I feel like the Aragorn in the books, it's not so much that he has doubts about himself; it's that he's biding his time. He's kind of trusting in Providence to put him into the place that he needs to be.
Right time, yeah.
And it's not so much in whereas in the films it's like I know I have this calling, but can I live up to it? And maybe there's some of that in the book. I don't know. It's an interesting question, and that's why I'm not sure, and I'd like to hear people's opinions on it if they want to offer it. What's the textual evidence say when it comes to Aragorn? Is he full of doubt about his own calling, or even does he have hints of doubt about his own calling, or does he know? Is he confident in his own calling and who he is, and is simply trusting in Providence to place him to work everything out, right?
Yeah.
Doing what he can of his own free will and trusting in Providence to work everything out.
Right.
I just have to think like he was, he's raised by Elrond, essentially, and who makes it clear who he is.
Yeah.
And Elrond has been around for ages.
A long
Elrond,
time.
to have Elrond as essentially your father, not your biological father, but for all intents and purposes, your guardian and your father, the one who raises you.
Yeah.
I mean, Elrond's a king in his own way too.
Sure.
Right? So you're going to have a pretty strong sense of like, I think Elrond would do a good job of instilling that sense of who he is in him to a point where it wouldn't be a point of doubt, but it would just be a true confidence in who you are.
Right.
So I don't know.
No, it's an interesting point. Yeah, you bring up the question of how much maybe has watching the movies may possibly influenced the way that you read the book. But I was just going to say too that I don't think that he's had doubts. I don't think there's much evidence for that in the book. All I'm saying is that he just seems to he seems to be willing to kind of take the bull by the horns at this point.
Yeah.
And he's ready to fight.
Yeah, so maybe he's grown an awareness of this is the moment. Right? This is the moment to which I've been called.
Yes.
And I can get on board with that. I was going to say something else.
Because I feel like he has not been super proactive up to this point. I feel like he's kind of been a follower, right?
Yeah.
Like he's been following Gandalf, he's been following Elrond, he's just basically been doing what people have told him to do. Even now, following the paths of the dead, right? He didn't make that.
No, that's a good point. He
decision
certainly looked at Gandalf before as the leader of the Fellowship. He certainly was. What's the word? Deferential when it came to Gandalf. So no, you have a point there. You certainly have a point there. The question is, was there any doubt? And that does not seem to. So yeah, good clarification.
Thanks.
There was something else I was going to mention with this, but it doesn't come to mind. I forgot it. So
Sorry.
maybe it'll come back. No,
If
that's all right.
it's important, you'll remember it.
So
But I think it's funny that Gimli scolds him.
yeah, well, but I also think it's cool that Sauron is like afraid of him.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and it's cool too that Aragorn says that.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. Hold that
Yeah.
thought for a second.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I understand why in the movie they portray him as having some doubt, self-doubt, because I think that's more relatable.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
especially
Makes him more
especially
sympathetic.
people of our time relate more to that kind of a hero who's doubtful about his own calling.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just a product of our age or if that's truly a more human quality. But Tolkien made him. Frodo is doubtful of his calling,
Yes.
right? Frodo is full of self-doubt.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So Tolkien recognizes the virtue of having that kind of hero in a story and the relatability of having that kind of hero in a story. But when it comes to this character, Aragorn, he did not write him that way. He did not seem to write him that way. And so that's an interesting point. That's something to appreciate about what Tolkien was doing here. This is not a character that we are meant to relate to in that way.
Right.
There's other ways we can relate to Aragorn, but this is not a character we're meant to relate to in that way.
Right.
So
Yes.
Aragorn is just an upstanding dude
Totally.
in all ways.
Totally. But he seems to be coming into his own here. That's
Yes.
what I was trying to say.
Right.
And it's interesting too what Aragorn says about how Saruman saw him. Did I say that right? Is it Saruman?
Sauron.
Blah. Okay, that Sauron saw him. He says, in other guise than you see me here.
Yeah.
So Sauron saw him as the rightful king,
Right.
right? So it's interesting to think about, just that effect that Palantir has.
Right.
It's not just a means of communication, but it's like almost it's a window to the future.
Yes.
Or destiny, or whatever.
And a window into the soul, into like deeper things. The Palantir, like it peers into the mind of the other looking.
Yeah.
Right. So.
To what's really there, not just
Right.
what's on the outside.
Yeah, to the spirit, to more of the spiritual reality.
Yeah, good call.
So.
Yep.
So Aragorn, kind of concludes this conversation by saying, Gimli wants to act quickly, and Aragorn says the hasty stroke oft goes astray. We must press our enemy and no longer wait upon him for the move. See, my friends, when I had mastered the stone, I learned many things. A grave peril I saw come unlooked for upon Gondor from the south, that will draw off great strength from the defense of Minas Tirith. If it is not countered swiftly, I deem that the city will be lost ere 10 days be gone. Then lost it must be, said Gimli, for what help is there to send thither, and how could it come there in time? I have no help to send, therefore I must go myself, said Aragorn. But there is only one way through the mountains that will bring me to the coastlands before all is lost. That is the path of the dead. So Aragorn realizes that he must go through the paths of the dead, not only because Elrond said this thing to him earlier in the chapter, but because he realizes that and not only are these forces coming from Mordor from the east, but from the south there's coming a big force against Minas Tirith. So they're they're about to get surrounded, not on all sides, but they're about to get slaughtered, attacked from the east and from the south.
Yes.
Which is an even bigger problem. It's a big enough force coming from the east. And so Aragorn realizes that his job is to go through the paths of the dead and to cut off the forces coming from the south before they can reach Gondor.
Right.
That's the part he's going to play.
Yes.
In this battle. So that's another deeper reason why he's going through the paths of the dead. And add that to the reasons he's going to go through the paths of the dead.
Right, to avoid the oncoming.
No, to take on the forces coming from the south.
Oh, the south. Yes. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
My lack of sense of direction came into play there. But is it also like kind of a shortcut? Like, is it going to help him get to Minas Tirith faster?
Not really. I mean, if you look at the map here, so there's Minas Tirith right there, this general area.
Yeah.
They're still back, like, up in this area.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so they've got a good ride ahead of them that way. All right. So he's saying we're going to go down here, and we're gonna go this way, right? So it's a roundabout way.
Oh, it is a roundabout way, but he wants to head off some of the gathering forces.
Right. And by the way, I was looking at, if you look at map 4 in The Lord of the Rings, it's basically he's going. If you look around where Snowborn is, Edoras and Snowborn, that language, that's about where they are right now, and they're going to be heading down through the mountains to where it says Morthond, and then they're going to come over through that. The plan is for them to go over through basically through the letters that say Gondor on that map, right? You can kind of trace their path through that way, and then head over up to Minas Tirith. So it's definitely a more circuitous.
Got it. Okay. Well, it's just interesting because part of the message from Elrond was that the days are short, right? And if thou art in haste, remember that. So it makes you think that it's going to be a quicker way to go, right? Because basically Elrond's saying that days are short, you got to hurry, right? So go away. Anyway, I was just found that a little...
Right, but I think he's coming to this realization that, he's being summoned to go in another. Like, think about this, all right? Think about that whole supernatural thing we talked about at the beginning of the episode, where who really summoned these guys to come down. So, if if these rangers had not come from the north to deliver a message from Elrond about the Paths of the Dead, would Aragorn have taken the Paths of the Dead? Right? Which is a circuitous method. No, he probably would have gone straight to Minas Tirith.
There would have been no reason for
maybe
him.
After he thinks through, I need to go, he realizes that there's a force coming from the south, and using the Palantir and everything, he realizes that there's another force coming from the south. Maybe he would have done that, taken the Paths of the Dead, but at the very least, Elrond plants that kind of confirms it for him by saying this, right?
Okay.
So Arwen confirms it for him by saying this. So this message that comes from a mysterious summons sends him down through the south to take a circuitous path when logic and necessity would dictate that he should go the straight path, so that he can help shore up Minas Tirith along with the rest of the forces of Rohan.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's an interesting little note that, again, you seem to have this kind of supernatural, divine, mysterious influence going on to get them to go this way.
Yeah, because otherwise, most likely, he would not have.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So let's look at this poem concerning the Paths of the Dead. I can go ahead and read it.
Okay.
It says, "Thus spoke Malbeth the Seer in the days of Arvedui, last king at Fornost," said Aragorn. And by the way, the Fornost was the capital of Arnor. Thank you. So if you look up here, just north of the Shire, there's this place Fornost, and then Arnor. So Arnor, there were two kingdoms of the Dunedain, right? There was Arnor in the north and Gondor in the south.
Right.
When they came there.
Yes.
Arnor fell a long time ago.
Yes.
Gondor is the last holdout, but Fornost was like the capital. It was like the Osgiliath or the Minas Tirith of the north. Once upon a time.
Okay.
So this is a seer of that particular play, Malbeth the Seer, in the days of Arvedui, the last king of Fornost. "Over the land there lies a long shadow, westward reaching wings of darkness. The tower trembles. To the tombs of kings doom approaches. The dead awaken, for the hour is come for the Oathbreakers. At the stone of Eric they shall stand again, and hear there a horn in the hills ringing. Whose shall the horn be? Who shall call them from the grey twilight, the forgotten people? The heir of him to whom the oath they swore. From the north shall he come, need shall drive him. He shall pass the door to the Paths of the Dead."
So they're going, their destination here is the stone of Eric.
The stone of Eric.
Eric.
Yeah, Eric. Yeah. I think that's the way you say it.
Okay. All right. And he needs to he needs to go to that stone and call the Oathbreakers.
That's right.
Okay.
Right. So.
It's a very mysterious poem. I feel like I read this and I was like, I have no idea what he's talking about.
Right.
Who are these Oathbreakers and the forgotten people, and what's up with this horn, and why is the stone so important? And yeah, it kind of added this dimension of just kind of
so
worldliness.
So these men, these Oathbreakers, were these people that Isildur, these men of the mountains, who Isildur had. They had sworn an oath to Isildur to support him when he called, and they did not. The men of the mountains were called to fulfill their oath by Isildur, and they would not, for they had worshipped Sauron in the Dark Years. So remember we go back to Numenor, the tale of Calabaith, Numenor, that the peoples had worshipped, some of the peoples who lived in Middle Earth, not Numenor, but in Middle Earth had worshipped Sauron. And of course there was eventually that kind of like Morgothish cult in Numenor itself.
Right. Yes.
But these people had worshipped Sauron. So they failed on Isildur, and so they're basically the sleepless dead now. Mm-hmm. Right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, and then this prophecy came that a king, that someone would come along who was able to call them to live up to their oath.
So these people are dead.
Right.
Like they're basically just spirits.
They're like ghosts.
And this horn, if blown by the right person at the stone, can basically bring them back to life.
Yes.
So that they can fulfill their oath.
Back to life. I don't know if it's back to life per se.
Yeah, right. But I mean, like...
Well, we'll see when we get...
Give them an opportunity
We'll see when we get there.
Okay.
We'll see when we get there.
Okay.
So, exactly what form they shall take.
Right.
But
it is some kind of... They have some role to play in the upcoming battle.
They're restless. Like, they're
Okay.
restless dead.
Gotcha.
Right?
Gotcha.
They dwell in some kind of limbo or something like that.
Because they didn't keep their oath.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now they're going to be given the opportunity to make good on that oath.
Yes.
That they broke. Okay.
Exactly.
Got it.
So Aragorn says, "To the Stone of Eric, I seek the paths of the dead. Come with me who will." And so Legolas and Gimli rise and follow Aragorn from the hall. The rangers go along Halbarad, and they head into this place at Dunharrow through the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
So now they don't quite depart fully yet, because we have this interaction with Éowyn. So this is worth spending a little time with, I think.
No, I agree.
So go ahead.
I'm just trying to get my bearings here. So when this whole thing happens with this poem about the paths of the dead,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of the purpose of all that, like, have they left the company? Have they actually departed at this point? Do you know what I mean? Have they left Théoden and Merry?
I believe so, yeah. It says, because right after that it says, "And while Théoden went by slow paths to the hills, the Grey Company passed swiftly over the plain, and on the next day in the afternoon they came to Edoras."
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there he's... Okay, yeah, they had their goodbyes, actually, a little before that. Okay.
Yes.
All right. I'm straight now, thanks.
So...
I appreciate you being so
So so as they pass through Edoras, they meet up with Éowyn.
Right.
And who's back there kind of ruling the people in Théoden's stead.
Right, yes.
So, Éowyn is talking to him about, like, where are you going and all this kind of thing. And she wonders why he must go on this deadly road. And it says, she says, "You are a stern lord and resolute, and thus do men when renowned." She paused. "Lord, if you must go, then let me ride in your following, for I am weary of skulking in the hills and wish to face peril and battle." He says, "Your duty is with your people." "Too often have I heard of duty," she cried, "but am I not of the house of Eorl, a shield maiden and not a dry nurse? I have waited on faltering feet long enough. Since they falter no longer, it seems, may I not now spend my life as I will?" "Few may do that with honor," he answered. "But as for you, lady, did you not accept the charge to govern the people until their lord's return? If you had not been chosen, then some marshal or captain would have been set in the same place, and he could not ride away from his charge were he weary of it or no." "Shall I always be chosen?" she said bitterly. "Shall I always be left behind when the riders depart, to mind the house while they win renown, and find food and beds when they return?" "A time may come soon," said he, "when none will return. Then there will be need of valor without renown, for none shall remember the deeds that are done in the last defense of your homes. Yet the deeds will not be less valiant because they are unpraised." And she answered, "All your words are but to say, 'You are a woman, and your part is in the house.' But when the men have died in battle and honor, you have leave to be burned in the house, for the men will need it no more. But I am of the house of Eorl, and not a serving woman. I can ride and wield blade, and I do not fear either pain or death. "What do you fear, lady?" he asked. "A cage," she said, "to stay behind bars until use and old age accept them, and all chance of doing great deeds is gone beyond recall or desire. And yet you counseled me not to adventure on the road that I had chosen, because it was perilous." "So may one counsel another," she said. "Yet I do not bid you flee from peril, but to ride to battle where your sword may win renown and victory. I would not see a thing that is high and excellent cast away needlessly." "Nor would I," he said. "Therefore I say to you, lady, stay, for you have no errand to the south. Neither have those others who go with thee. They go only because they would not be parted from thee, because they love thee." Then she turned and vanished into the night. So, pretty interesting, fascinating dialogue, I think, back and forth.
Agreed. Yeah.
And I think Tolkien does a pretty good job of handling this kind of situation. This is not something he had to put into the story. It's definitely a subplot, but it adds another layer, to the whole story with this character Éowyn, who is not content at sitting back and kind of hearing the standard responses to why she should stay behind and not go with the men to battle.
Yeah, she's fierce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She really is, and she has a ready response to everything he says.
Yeah, she does. I totally expected Aragorn to fold and be like, "Fine, you can come." But she was like, not. And she tries again later in the chapter.
She does, yeah. Just a bit later,
Yeah.
she says, she falls on her knees. It says, "Then wilt thou not let me ride with his company as I have asked?" "I will not, lady," he said, "for that I could not grant without leave of the king and of your brother, and they will not return until tomorrow. But I count now every hour, indeed every minute. Farewell." Then she fell on her knees, saying, "I beg thee." "Nay, lady," he said, and taking her by the hand, he raised her. Then he kissed her hand and sprang into the saddle and rode away, and did not look back. And only those who knew him well and were near to him saw the pain that he bore.
I think he wanted to be able
I do, yeah.
to accept her, her desire.
Well, he
to
says
come.
the reason he's not is because he would
needs
need
permission.
from
Right.
Theoden
Which is very
and from her brother.
honorable,
Yeah.
very chivalrous on his part, for sure.
Definitely notice chivalry here.
Yeah, very much so. But I feel bad for Éowyn.
Yeah.
It's interesting too, because I think about the time that Tolkien was writing this, right? Just like this was written, what, 50s?
Yeah.
Earlier.
Really, 30s, 40s, 50s, late 30s, 40s, early 50s.
I mean, you just think about just women, how women were perceived and treated.
Yeah.
In our society, that time, during
Right.
that time. And they were very much, I think there was kind of that barefoot in the kitchen mindset. Women didn't really start to work out of the home until World War II. Right?
Well,
Because they were
not
forced
entirely,
to.
but there was a lot of, but it certainly took off during World War II because they needed
workers.
workers and the men were off at
Right,
war.
exactly.
But you have, obviously World War II took place during the writing of a lot of the Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah.
It was World War II was the late 30s through 1945, and yeah, like the men did most of the fighting in that case.
Right.
There were certainly women. I think women were increasingly involved in the armed forces, but it usually was not in a combat role. It wasn't directly in a combat role ever.
Right. But I was just thinking just about the role of women in general.
Yeah.
Because it was very much frowned upon for them to really have much of a role outside the home.
Right.
And here, Tolkien creates this character who very much wants to be part of the action and wants, is kind of not shirking her duty, but is really trying hard to, it's almost like an early nod to a women's lib movement, almost.
Certainly.
There's definitely a note of girl power.
There's certainly a lot of overlap with feminism and that kind of thing in this discussion. It's fascinating, especially when you consider that time that he was writing it in. And again, we got to be careful not to be like, Tolkien was writing topically about this.
And I'm not saying that.
But I know you're not.
Think about kind of what was going on in Tolkien's world. Go ahead.
I don't think anyone's accusing anybody of anything. I think all I'm saying is, first, one of the first foundational things when you're looking at Tolkien's works is don't assume he's writing topically about something.
Right.
He's writing for characters. He's writing for the story. And he's writing for kind of he's writing for the story. That's the bottom line. But that doesn't mean there's not overlap and there's not applicability to the dynamics that go on in these stories.
Right.
I don't think it was a new thing in World War II or in that time for women to say, I see a battle that I want to ride off to with the men.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, I'm not saying, it certainly wasn't a widespread thing.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't necessarily like a social movement behind it.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I think there have always been women who have wanted, and in certain cultures, women were welcome to fight. You know?
No, I agree.
But I think there's always been women who want to fight, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Who want to go off to the battle.
Absolutely.
With the men.
Yeah.
And get very angry when they're not allowed to.
Mm-hmm.
And feel it an injustice.
Yes.
And so I think Éowyn, in a way, represents that perspective.
Yeah.
Right?
Who are
Like,
very
why am I
much
not
in
to?
a- yeah.
On the counter of it, let's think about that, right? Like, so all these women stay behind, as you mentioned, and they played a role, right?
Mm-hmm.
They played a. You think about it in a mass scale war like this,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's in Middle Earth right now or it's
Yeah.
in World War II.
Right.
Why do you fight? Why do you fight these wars? Well, it's to preserve a certain way of life. It's
Mm-hmm.
to preserve a certain way of civilization.
Yes. Yep.
Okay? There's a civilization here in Rohan that wants to be preserved, that wants to preserve itself. And if everybody, including the women and the children, ride off to battle, there's no one left to preserve the civilization while you're off at battle.
Well said.
So someone's got to be doing the preserving of the civilization.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. Now, the interesting question is, does it always have to be the women who do that? Right? On a mass scale war
And
like this.
obviously, Éowyn would say
And
absolutely not.
Does that mean that a woman can't ride off to, that certain women, even when the rest of the women are staying behind, can't ride off to battle? And yeah, Éowyn would say certainly not.
Yeah.
Now, what was Tolkien's perspective on that? I don't know. I don't know if that really even matters in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's just representing a certain type of he's representing a certain character, a certain type of person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who looks at this and says, I see great evil, I want to take it head on.
Sure.
I want to go head on against it because it makes me furious.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's absolutely admirable. And I think he handles this character of Éowyn beautifully.
He really does.
One of his best characters.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that Aragorn, just in his responses to her, has tremendous respect for what she wants to do.
Yeah.
And I think if it were up to him, I think he would have totally let her come along.
Mm-hmm.
But he also, he really, I think, does what he can to help Éowyn see the beauty and the bravery and the courage in the role that she's been assigned to. Even though it's not nearly as glorious, right? It doesn't come with the renown that his role does. Like, there's a place for it, and it's really important.
Well, and look, I look at this and I say, he makes the point of, like, if you go off, then they'll have to leave behind some captain, right? Some captain of the Riders of Rohan to do this.
Right.
And I think to myself, like, not only would that take him away from the men who normally he leads, right, into battle, but also as compared to the job that Éowyn is probably doing in being in charge of the people who are left behind, this captain would probably be an idiot. Because usually, men who are like warriors and spend their life just fighting wars. I mean, there are exceptions to this, but a lot of times they're kind of idiots when it comes to like the everyday, like, not that they're idiots. It's just that they're
they don't have the same instincts.
It's not the same to lead a peaceful civilization, to lead mothers and women whose and their children and old people who are not like ready to charge out and live hard lives, right?
Yeah.
That it's just not the same as leading a bunch of warriors.
Right.
It's two different things.
Yes.
And
it takes two different personalities.
And exactly, and it takes different skill sets, quite
Yeah,
honestly.
It does.
And
Yeah,
Aragorn
right.
is trying to help her see the beauty in the things that she has the skills to do that some random captain of Rohan would not.
Right. Right.
And
It could be even though Éowyn's intentions are very admirable, and you know Aragorn has tremendous respect for them. I think he's trying to show this could cause a very ugly domino effect.
Mhm.
And I think he's really trying to encourage her in her place that she's been assigned to.
Right.
Because sometimes the role that Éowyn is in right now, I think it's probably a very thankless job.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So I think Aragorn's doing what he can to kind of lift her up and be like, just do your duty.
Mm-hmm.
I know I know you'd rather be out here, and circumstances were different. I'd welcome you, but we need you here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is not the last we'll hear from Éowyn about this. So she does not. Aragorn does not permit her to come with him. But what do you make of this little? First of all, she says this. They go only because they would not be parted from thee, because they love thee, and then him kissing her hand. I mean, is there a romantic note to that?
Well, Peter Jackson would want us to think so.
Well, let's leave aside what Peter Jackson thinks.
Romantic? No, I don't think so.
Really?
I don't think so. I think Aragorn's heart is 110% with Éowyn.
No, I agree. No, with Arwen.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
I meant with Arwen.
Right.
Why does Tolkien have to make these names so simple?
On her part, what do you think?
Oh, on her part. That's a good question. I don't know. I think there's probably some kind of attraction there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how she could
how could she not?
be attracted.
How could she not be?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But I think she's also very much aware that that this is not that he's out of her league, but that this is just something that most likely has no future.
Right.
So I think she's probably attracted to him, but I think she's also very guarded in her emotions.
Okay, then what do you think about where it says, and then he kissed her hand and sprang into the saddle and rode away and did not look back, and only those who knew him well and were near to him saw the pain that he bore.
What do I make of that?
The pain that he bore.
The pain that he bore. See, when I read that, I thought that he was very... I felt like that was related to the fact that he couldn't give her what she wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Which was to come along and fight. That's what I thought he was pained about. Because I think he does... I think, personally, I think he looks at Éowyn almost as like a sister.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he wants... I think he has tremendous respect for her, and I think he loves her in a filial way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that he would have liked to have... And I think he realizes that she could be a tremendous asset in this war. But that she's not his to take.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, I don't know. It's very ambiguous.
Yeah,
I think this whole exchange is ambiguous, and it's now that I think of it, it's one that I feel like I'd like to research a little bit and find out if there was different perspectives on it and different drafts of the story.
Mm-hmm.
If there's anything in the letters, in Tolkien's letters, that speaks to it. If there is any intent of romance in this, but it's interesting because if this were modern people, then it would automatically be assumed that there's like this romantic aspect to all of this. But I think what you propose is certainly plausible and maybe even likely given Tolkien's perspective on this story and the character of these people.
And also that we hear from Arwen earlier in this chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And she sends him the special gift and, calls him Elfstone. I mean, it's clear that that's a very special romantic relationship.
True, but that doesn't mean that there couldn't be some, that even though there is the heart connection might not still be there.
That's
you know
true.
what I'm saying?
That's true. And I think if there's anything there, I think it's probably more on Éowyn's side than Aragorn's.
Yeah.
But I'd be interested to know what you guys think, what our listeners
Yeah,
think.
we'll just open that one up again. Another interesting question. If you all have any thoughts on that you want to share via correspondence, send it to tolkienroadpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Or, hey, pop in over when I post the episode on Facebook. You can let us know your thoughts there, or on Twitter @TolkienRoad.
Yes.
So, interesting question. So that's Éowyn and Aragorn, and then now we head into the Paths of the Dead. They leave Éowyn behind, and Aragorn rides in with Legolas, Gimli, and the rangers from the north. And Gimli is a scaredy cat.
He is. Which is so ironic,
I know.
given that he grew up in caves.
Yeah. An elf will go underground and a dwarf dare not. Here is a thing unheard of, he says.
Yep.
And he plunges in, and it's he just can't. And he's amazed as Aragorn goes forward. He's like, does he feel no fear?
Mm-hmm.
In any other cave, Gimli, Gloin's son, would have been the first to run to the gleam of gold, but not here. Let it lie. So
do we know who this dead guy is that they find in here?
read the section.
Okay, so nonetheless, he drew near and saw Aragorn kneeling, while Elladan held aloft both torches. Before him were the bones of a mighty man. He had been clad in mail, and still his harness lay there whole. For the cavern's air was as dry as dust, and his hauberk was gilded. His belt was of gold and garnets, and rich with gold was the helm upon his bony head, face downward on the floor. He had fallen near the far wall of the cave, as now could be seen, and before him stood a stony door closed fast. His finger bones were still clawing at the cracks. A notched and broken sword lay by him, as if he had hewn at the rock in his last despair. Aragorn did not touch him, but after gazing silently for a while, he rose and sighed. Hither shall the flowers of Simbelman... I totally butchered that, didn't I?
Simbelmane.
Come never unto world's end, he murmured. 9 mounds and 7 there are now, green with grass, and through all the long years he has lain at the door that he could not unlock. Whither does it lead? Why would he pass? None shall ever know. For that is not my errand, he cried, turning back and speaking to the whispering darkness behind. Keep your hoards and your secrets hidden in the accursed years. Speed only, we ask. Let us pass, and then come. I summon you to the stone of Eric.
Yeah, I don't think it's clear who
I don't know that
this
it really
is.
matters either.
Yeah.
It's just that it's clear how dangerous this path is.
Yeah. And as they're going, they get the sense that they're being followed.
Yeah.
Elladan says, yes, the dead ride behind. They have been summoned. So they feel this sense of being summoned by Aragorn, and they're following behind. And eventually they come through. They're underneath the mountains for an unknown amount of time. Right. They're not really sure. Again, we can look at Appendix B.
It's totally dark. I mean,
right.
It's completely dark. And then their torches go out. So there's
right.
yeah.
So let's see if we can piece it together. It is, let's see, Aragorn, sets out to Eric and comes to Calimbel. So they're not. They're only under there. They're under there for less than a day.
Okay.
Right. It says on the 8th he takes the paths of the dead at daybreak. He reaches Eric at midnight. Frodo leaves. Okay. So they reach Eric on the other side of the mountains at daybreak at midnight.
Yeah.
So they come out on the other side of this area called Morthond, and again that's where I mentioned in map 4 in the book.
Right.
On the south side of the mountains, the long chill river that flows at last to the sea that washes the walls of Dol Amroth. So they're in this Morthond Vale, and a great bay that beat up against the sheer southern faces the mountains. Its steep slopes were grass-grown, but all was gray in that hour, for the sun had gone, and far below lights twinkled in the homes of men. The vale was rich, and many folk dwelt there. Then, without turning, Aragorn cried aloud so that all could hear, "Friends, forget your weariness. Ride now, ride. We must come to the stone of Eric ere this day passes, and long still is the way." So without looking back, they rode the mountain fields until they came to a bridge over the growing torrent, and found a road that went down into the land. So the people come out that live in this area come out and start to yell, the king of the dead has come upon us.
They're scared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not really sure what's going on. Everyone fled before his face, and still he heads for the hill of Eric. And these people, the dead that were following behind him under the mountains, follow still to this stone of Eric. And it says, do you want to read this? To that stone the company came.
To that stone the company came and halted in the dead of night. Then Elrohir gave to Aragorn a silver horn, and he blew upon it, and it seemed to those that stood near that they heard a sound of answering horns, as if it was an echo in deep caves far away. No other sound they heard, and yet they were aware of a great host gathered all about the hill on which they stood, and a chill wind, like the breath of ghosts, came down from the mountains. But Aragorn dismounted, and standing by the stone, he cried in a great voice, Oathbreakers, why have ye come? And a voice was heard out of the night that answered him as if from far away, To fulfill our oath and have peace. Then Aragorn said, The hour is come at last, now I go to Pelargir upon Anduin, and ye shall come after me. And when all this land is clean of the servants of Sauron, I will hold the oath fulfilled, and ye shall have peace and depart forever. For I am Elisar, Isildur's heir of Gondor.
Yes. So this is the summons. He's called them to help him rid this land of the servants of Sauron.
Right.
And as dawn comes, they pass into the east. The next day there came no dawn, and the great company passed on into the darkness of the storm of Mordor and were lost to mortal sight. But the dead followed them.
I thought that was interesting. This chapter ended very much the same way that chapter 1 ended, right? Where Gandalf says, there will be no dawn. The darkness has begun, there will be no dawn.
Right.
And then here it says that there was no dawn in this one, right? But the next day there came no dawn, and the great company passed on into the darkness of the storm of Mordor.
Yes, indeed.
So
now that we've talked about it, what do you think of this chapter?
I think I liked it a little bit more than I did at first.
Yeah.
So good job.
I thought you would.
Mission fulfilled, Johnny.
Woohoo!
Yay.
Good stuff.
No, it was good. It was definitely, talking about it always makes it come alive.
Right on.
Yeah. Now what time is it?
You know what time it is.
No. Oh yeah. Time to get my groove on. Am I going first?
I'll go first.
Okay, go first. Hit it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 syllables in haiku.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 syllables in haiku. Nice.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So, rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, let's do it. Ready? Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Ah! Quadruples. Alright. Who's going first? You or me?
You go first.
Me? Okay. With courage most fair, she pleads her case, longing for renown, not a cage.
Nice.
Yeah.
A little tribute to Éowyn there.
Shout out to my girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, your turn.
Here's mine. Rising from ruin, Ranger King comes, returning to redeem the dead.
Ooh. I like that, all the alliteration.
Yeah.
Nicely
I
done.
thought Tolkien would have been pretty proud of that one.
Yeah,
with all the
that one's
alliteration.
actually really good.
Yeah.
Rising, ruin, ranger, returning, redeem. Nice. I think that deserves a high five.
All right.
Very good. Very good. Well, this must be a busy time of year, or else people didn't really dig this chapter because we only have one haiku.
Oh, well, okay.
That's okay. By Gregory. Keeping it real. Gregory Simonson. He says, great chapter, especially the paths of the dead. Well, to get right to it, here is the first haiku. From Greg, he says, Northern Rangers ever guarding, unknown, unthanked, true nobles of Arnor.
Right on.
And he says, not much I can think of to comment on in the not much I can think of to comment on in the coming of the Dunedain. Merry pledging service to Théoden reminds me of something I forgot to put in last time. There seem to be several pairs of characters that are faced with the same or a similar choice, and while one chooses rightly, the other makes the wrong choice. Gandalf and Saruman, Aragorn and Isildur, emphasized more in the films, Faramir and Boromir, Bilbo and Gollum, Denethor and Théoden are another such pair.
Yes.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Then he has a...
Lots of parallels like that
yeah.
throughout the story,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good call, Greg. And he has one more for us that I'll let you
Okay.
read.
First faithless, then cursed. At last comes king. Redemption. Come, dead. Ride to war. Awesome.
That's
Good one.
really good.
Well done.
That's really, really good. Awesome. Well, thanks for writing in, Greg.
Yeah, thank you, Greg.
Yeah. Oh, he has an interesting question here. Do you see this?
What?
He says, just recently had a thought about this part, about what he just, about the summoning of the dead, that he refers to in his haiku. He said, could this section be inspired by the harrowing of hell? What are your thoughts on this?
I think so. I feel like I've read a reference to that somewhere, but I believe it is.
Yeah.
I believe it's at least Tolkien recognized. I think it falls under that. I think it falls under the whole, intentionally religious and Catholic, or thoroughly religious and Catholic, unconsciously so in the writing, but consciously so in the revision.
Gotcha.
Or I'm butchering that quote a little bit, but that basic idea of, like, I think Tolkien recognized that this paralleled that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the harrowing of hell. The harrowing of hell, by the way, in case you're not familiar with that idea, is the teaching that between Good Friday, when Christ was crucified, and then Easter Sunday, which was the resurrection, what was he doing on Holy Saturday? Well, he basically descended to the abode of the dead, that's basically where, before the coming of Christ, the gates of heaven were closed to all of mankind, and so the idea there is that there were still lots of righteous people, and what happened to them? Well, they did not go to heaven, but they went to, you might call it Sheol or something like that.
It's called like the bosom of...
Sometimes it's referred to as the bosom of Abraham, but it was it was a place of kind of like sleep, of almost like soul sleep, and they just rest and they just waited there.
Yeah.
And there's an ancient homily on this that actually explains it really well. You can look up. It was like a 1st century homily. No one knows who wrote it, but it's usually in the Office of Readings on Holy Saturday. But basically, that between Good Friday and Easter Sunday, Christ descended into this place, the bosom of Abraham, where like you'd have like Moses and
Isaac,
David and Abraham and other folks like this, right? Who were like
the patriarchs,
the just
yeah,
of the time before Christ, and then took them to heaven, right?
Yeah,
opened the gates of paradise. They were the first to get to go in. So,
well, yeah. Now you explain it that way. This definitely,
I
feel like has some semblance,
right? Yeah, it certainly has parallels. I mean, there's differences too, but there's certainly parallels to it.
Yeah.
And I was trying to call attention to a little bit of that with my haiku as well.
Yeah, Greg's second, and your haiku had some similar notes for sure.
Yeah, but definitely great minds think alike.
Yeah, indeed they do.
So, any other correspondence?
No, that's it.
Well, okay.
People must be like, just hanging out at the beach or something. I don't know. But maybe next week we'll get more, or actually week after, because we're taking a break next week.
That's right. So we are going to. Where the next episode will be released on August 7th, and so we need haiku. So that'll be the next chapter, chapter 3, the Muster of Rohan, and we'll need haiku by the what is it? The 2nd? Yeah, the 2nd of August.
Yeah.
Try to get it in by then.
Sounds right.
You can still send it after that. We'll probably still get it on air within a couple of days after that, but that's kind of the for sure cutoff. And come on, send us haiku, people. Where are y'all? Where you at?
I know.
So, that's when we'll be back. So we'll have a little bonus episode between now and then. No work on your part required.
Phew.
Yeah.
You probably could read my expression. Like, what? More work? No.
All right. Okay, well, thanks again to our patrons. Y'all rock.
Yes.
Our executive producer, Dr. William Hutton. as well as Shannon Stockbridge, Josh Sosa, Brian Orr, Margaret Lyon, Emilio Perea, Zeke Farmer, Caleb Santana, James Applegate, Caitlin Fascista, Matt Scarrance, Al Taylor, Par Brenner, James Lindberg, Chris Loftus, and Lawrence McGowan. We appreciate y'all.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
All right.
All right.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We will talk at you next
Yes,
time.
thank you guys. Y'all are the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.
Please remember to check out truemyths.org and tolkienroad.com for show notes and plenty of other Tolkien goodness. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, please leave the Tolkien Road a rating and feedback on iTunes, and consider supporting us financially via patreon.com/TolkienRoad. We'll be taking the next week off, but we'll return on August 7th with the Muster of Rohan, Book 5, Chapter 3 of The Lord of the Rings. Please send haiku or other correspondence to tolkienroadpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, the road goes ever on.